I brought a teacher. I was gonna say I brought a friend from home, but I brought a teacher from home. So because it doesn't sound right, does it?
No.
Does it?
I'm already in trouble. We're 30 seconds in, and I'm already in trouble. Forget it. Roll the credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
And from Portland, Oregon, I'm Broedy Ipox.
And we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of professional life. And we're in season 4, episode 2. We're talking about pursuing passions, misfits. Is it a viable career? Everyone says, what is it? Find your passion. You'll never work a day in your life, or something along those lines. Let's get into it. Let's discuss it. And we brought a special guest. We brought a special guest who, I don't know, should I introduce you, or should you introduce you? Or...
No.
Okay, I'll introduce you. All right, so I brought along Linda Nicholls-Gidley, who had the awesome responsibility and loathsome obligation of being my vocal tutor for 3 years of acting college. So we're going back at least 15 years. Yeah.
And that's where you're putting in that little bit about how I don't look like I've aged.
You haven't.
At all.
I don't. And I just, and grown children and a sparkling career and all those sorts of things. But you have had a fairly stellar career in all seriousness. You've worked on How to Train Your Dragon, you've worked on Wicked and a whole bunch of other musicals. Do you want to give the folks at home a bit of insight into what a voice and dialect coach, what do you do, Linda? Because I can speak, so why do I need you?
Yeah, well, that's true. I haven't actually worked on Wicked, so
no.
That's something.
Sorry.
But I have worked on
Heaps.
a lot of other massive musicals here in Australia. What do I do? Actually, that is the first question my husband asked when he saw me teach a class. They pay you for this shit, is what he said. And I said, yeah, babe, they do. They absolutely do. And pretty well, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was teaching you, I did a lot more of, hey, how do you breathe? And why are you so tense when you're breathing? And stop doing that because you're going to hurt yourself. A lot of that kind of thing. And talking about how resonance works and how voices are produced and how to sustain your voice healthily. But these days I do a lot more accent dialect coaching. So I'm in big rehearsal rooms working with actors, teaching them how to do different accents, or I'm working remotely with actors on set.
Who's the guy that you just came from? Because we're talking about it off cam. Spanish accent, but you don't speak Spanish.
He's learning Spanish, so he wanted to know how to do the accent so that when he speaks Spanish, he doesn't sound Australian when he's speaking Spanish. So do a bit of that.
And the last time we had coffee, I remember you were doing a Swedish play about vampires, but they were all speaking English, but they needed to be in a Swedish accent.
Yeah, Let the Right One In at Darlinghurst Theatre Company. Yeah, that was a blast. Really like trying to get horror into a theatrical landscape, which was kind of cool as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
It was great. And so for those who don't sort of get it, I mean, the reason actors need a voice coach is the voice is sort of your main tool and instrument that you'll use for all things, not just in life, but also in theatre and film. And so learning how to maintain and articulate and flex it in every way possible is a really, really, really important skill, which is why you have vocal coaches, let alone like the fancy stuff of how to do a fancy accent and how to sound like you're from Portland if you're not from Portland. But the reason I wanted to introduce Linda and the reason I wanted to bring her onto this episode is because we're talking about passion and passionate people and passions in life and the workplace. And Linda's seen an awful lot of passionate students in various different colleges. And so she'd be a great person to sort of get insider industry perspective on what's it like and what does it take. And I'm going to take a little bit of a segue to run this episode slightly differently. But Broedy, I'll get your take on it first before I sort of take us down the story lane. Like, what's your take on? I mean, you self-tattoo yourself on TikTok, so obviously you have a bit of a passionate drive. You know what I mean? So, what is it about that for you and that form of expression? And, you know, what does it mean to you? And would you ever turn it into a career, for instance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it depends on the journey, and I think it depends on the level of passion. So I am passionate about art, and I'm passionate about expression. I'm not so passionate about tattooing. It's not something that when I started doing it, it feels like I need to continue doing it and it's grabbing me in that way.
Mm.
It really is just about the expression of that. So, I mean, as long as it taps into those things, the expression that I'm trying to reach and, I don't know, somewhat of a level of interest, so like a hobby or something
Yeah.
along those lines, then I'd say it's more so about the enjoyment of it than the passion, and that's more important because
Interesting.
I don't think passion is sustainable.
We're going to get into that. That's interesting. All right. So here's a little bit of a different, I guess, through line for this episode. Fun fact, I wrote a mini essay, I should say, on what constitutes passion for fun, because that's what I do. But I wrote this about 10 years ago, as a matter of fact. I pulled it out of the archives. It's dated 2014. And it breaks down. So it's basically broken into 3 parts. And so for this episode, I want to go through each section and we'll get you guys' responses as we sort of move along. So here we go. Take a seat, Misfits, get comfortable. So the other day I bumped into a friend that I hadn't seen in a while. There was the usual small talk and she asked how my film was going. Because back then, 10 years ago, I was in the middle of writing, producing, directing and starring in an indie feature. And she asked me how my film was going. I was more positive than usual because over the weekend we'd managed to finally shoot a day's worth of scenes that had taken us over a year to secure the location. At least you're working on your passion, she said. I wish I was passionate about something. So at first, this struck me as a little sad. And then I realized this is not the first time that I've heard something like this. Among others, my best friend is a well-educated professional guy in his 30s. And at times, he too talks to me with envy of how I've found my passion, and he often wished he could find that thing that would ignite him and give him a solid purpose. And so it got me thinking, what exactly constitutes passion? Miss Linda, I'll go to you first.
I think there has to be a big dollop of crazy in there, do you know? Because to follow whatever it is, the journey, the path through to fruition of whatever it is, you have to be single-minded, and to do that, there has to be a big dollop of crazy, because otherwise you let other things interfere and get in the way.
Common sense,
Yeah,
logic,
right.
What everyone else
all
is
the
doing.
hurdles, all the obstacles, you let them get in the way, and those things you consider them, and then you think, oh, maybe this is not the best course of action. So in passion, I think that single-mindedness and that drive also comes from a lack of, I don't want to say self-regulation, but it probably does come from a lack of self-regulation.
Yeah. Is this a sentiment that you hear sort of around in your circles? Like, has it been said to you, like you're a vocal coach day in, day out, you've had basically the same profession for a significant amount of time. And generally in the arts, you've got people outside of the arts looking in going, wow, you're like so creative, so passionate. I wish I could be or do that. Like, do you hear that often?
I'm going to be honest and say I don't No, that's actually probably not true. I was going to say I don't think anybody's passionate about voice coaching, but probably people are.
Well, you'd have to be.
No, I'm sort of crazy interested in how we can make weird sounds. That's kind of what I'm interested in, and that's where
Right.
my kind of interest comes from. And I can delve into those things and get to the weird parts of the internet in a kind of crazy, passionate way without, thought of anything else, just to get at a sound that I really like or one that I want to explore. But I hear it said all this time from acting teachers to students,
Right.
you have to have passion to succeed. That is what's going to allow you to succeed.
Interesting.
And I don't know that I agree with that.
Interesting. Broedy, your turn. Do you have a passion? Is it something that you admire in other people, or is it something that friends around you are envious of? Is okay, I'll get to that later, but we'll start here.
I'm passionate about learning. I think again, as long as I'm checking a certain box. I have to apologize, guys. I might need to step aside. I'm feeling extremely sick. Out of nowhere. I apologize. Chris,
Right.
do you guys want to? I know this
Yeah,
sounds
Linda and I will
strange.
do it. Just no, close your little window because you might like have a drink of water, then come back later.
Okay, cool.
No big
Again,
deal.
apologies, guys. Misfits, this kind of happens. I don't mind sharing this with you guys. This is real. We'll keep it in there. Just came from baby and then into the podcast, and I'm feeling terrible, and it is not great because I would love to be here and have to be a part of this conversation. But
you can hear all about it later.
Okay. All right.
I'll see you soon.
Okay. Deal.
All right. There you go. And then there were two. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
You and me. I want to go back to something that you said a minute ago about tutors advising actors that they need to have passion to sustain themselves. And Broedy said the same thing. He's like, I don't think it's viable long term. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't know, but I'll always champion the cause that it is. So, but you're probably more inside the teaching and crafting of students than I am. So why do you not think it, or why do you disagree with that sort of approach? Like you must have passion in order to, especially this industry, like go out and be an accountant that requires like no emotional investment. Go out and, make coffee, but if you want to create great art, arguably.
Yeah, I think there is a level of I think there is a level of people thinking that the most passionate people are the ones who are the most creative, are the ones who survive and have the ability, the temerity, whatever, to make their way through this industry. And I wonder what that says to young people and to actors in general.
Yeah.
It used to be, 100 years ago when I was training, if you weren't broken, you weren't really an actor.
It comes with a degree of trauma. So like bring your deepest, darkest to the stage and
Yeah. And I do believe you need to be driven, and I do believe you need to have a focus and goals and all of those sorts of things. I just think that if we're talking about passion as an entity in and of itself, I don't think it's sustainable, and I don't think it is I don't think it's the way necessarily through to success. I think systems often are a better way through to success.
That's really interesting. I'll tell you what, I'll move through the second part of this, excuse me, through this little essay, because this is starting to reach into what we're talking about here. All right, so we left off with what exactly constitutes passion. So passion's a cliched term that's tossed around with too much ease. Like every contestant on a reality television show, swears, singing or performing or dancing is their passion, no matter their skill level. And the worst culprits of all being actors. You know what I mean? You can just be passionate and show up, and I'm an actor. So to be passionate seems to be a term that allows one to forego skill or training or discipline in order to compete. At the same time, passion is lauded as an attainable goal and something to pursue, to live a life of passion, to love passionately, to pursue your passions, right? So an accountant would never get an interview based on being passionate, but any passionate person is allowed to audition for a singing, dancing, or acting college, right? And so herein, I think, is the clue that separates passion from other verbs. I believe that passion belies an emotional investment in one's actions, an investment, I would argue, that supersedes an outcome of simply winning or losing. So I often imagine it as a slow burning ember, something that is always present, but may never leave us. So logically, it makes sense that if we pursue our passions, something that we are emotionally invested in, then those actions will be sustained longer and ultimately have a more rewarding payoff. We should also recognize, like people like my father, not everyone's employment is their passion. Many don't require that attachment and would rather emotionally invest in areas outside of work, like life or sport or family and friends. So is passion something you find one day, like a lost treasure? Is it a journey that you commit yourself to, or is it, the secret sauce that's really been within you all along, Dorothy? Miss Gidley, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that maybe there is an element of emotional investment in it. Certainly, my own, when I produced and wrote and acted in my own play last year, I definitely had a need to tell the story, and because I found it difficult to get, I guess, programmed in some of the more accessible theatres. I went to a smaller theatre, got programmed, and made sure that I invested my time, my money, my emotion, my intellect, kind of everything I felt like I had to give to that project. And at the end of that, did I reach people? Yes. And did I get great feedback? Yes. And did I feel the need to really absolutely get in there and tell that story? Yes. Could it have been a passion project? I guess, in that passion fires really quickly and can just disappear as quickly. And that's not to say that I've lost the energy for that project and I wouldn't like to see it anywhere else, but I feel like that happens a lot. We get ignition, and then everything hits that flaming point, and then it's
evaporates.
Yeah. And I think that's true of people who audition for acting schools and then realize, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
They get that burst of energy, that hit of adrenaline, the endorphin rush, whatever, from a group of audiences clapping at them. And then they realize, actually, it's not about that at all. There's so much more behind that. And so I can see that someone who maybe is an accountant has an interest in the way the numbers fall together or solving an accounting problem. But again, it's like it is a flash in the pan. It's like that's over, and now I'm back in the grind of it.
Do you think, like, I guess in terms of, I don't know, the understanding of like careers or a career pathway or a satisfying career pathway, the sage advice is to lean this way, is to find something that you're interested or you are passionate about, and really lean into that, because you're more likely to be a success in those sorts of things. But if I wonder if that was the case, then all of us would be cops, firemen, astronauts, and studying dinosaurs.
The
right?
exciting things, right?
All those things, all those fun things.
Yeah.
And like you said at the beginning, like you need a certain element of crazy, and stubbornness and sheer defiance of the world operates like this. I don't want to. And this is a perfect example, because you did the same thing that I did. I couldn't get into theaters. I couldn't get funding from Ozfilm for anything, because you don't have Baz Luhrmann or a leading man attached, and you've got an indie thing, and it's not related to an Aboriginal story. So there's no way you're getting funding for anyone for anything. So the only option you have is to do it yourself. That's also the hardest, most expensive option. So 90% would tap out there. So somehow you pursue this thing, and then you attract crew and cast to pursue this thing with you, and not always to monetary gain. Spoilers: the film died on the cutting room floor. You know what I mean? We shot half a film in a week, which was amazing. We got fucked over for one venue. Took us a year to get back in, to get all the cast and crew and everything else to get the second venue. It took probably 2 years total of shooting to get everything that we needed, and then sort of realized in the end that the footage was barely usable. Cool, fun project. Learn a lot, all that sort of shit. But sort of like you said, at the end of the show, when you're counting costs and licking your wounds and the lights are off and the applause is over, would you do it again? And I guess this gets into the deeper question of passion, which I'm interested in, because we all totally recognize that ignition, that lust, that spark, that fuck yeah, like you want to seize on that. But then and passion sometimes gets a bad rap for that, but is not passion also the thing that sustains you through you not getting what you want, people not believing in you, you not having the relationship that you want, you not being where you need to be? But there's that something, like I wrote here, that slow burning ember, which might flare up every now and then, but something's got to sustain you and keep you warm. Otherwise, you just give it up, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I guess the question then is, why didn't you try to reshoot? Yeah. So that if that ember is still there, and I guess for me that was 20 years of not performing and then going back to it because the ember was still there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that passion, or is that coming back to there is an internal, I don't know, truth or authenticity that you have to honor?
Well, before we dive too philosophically into it, like, do you think is passion something that you find one day, like you stumble into the right career, just so happens to be, because that's every other acting.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson, wasn't at NIDA to audition. His brother was, and then while he was there, they said, "Oh, hey, you come and have a go," and then like the rest is history, right? So that's by chance he fell into the right career and the right profession. And arguably, there's butchers out there that are absolutely passionate about your work that you've never heard of, right? So now, is passion something that you find? Is it supposed to be your career? Should it be your career? Is it a personal choice?
I think lots of people have careers so that they can also do the thing that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So they do, like, people who have real jobs They do that so that they can, I don't know, in my sphere, so they can do community theatre at night, or
Yeah.
they can they are accountants during the day so that they can play at the jazz club at night, or
Yep.
so that they can have a sustainable practice doing something that they love, but they can also feed their family, or they don't have to be Van Gogh living
Right.
in a hut on the edge of a field.
Yeah. It's literally one of the guests we had on season 1, Jahan. She's a criminal defense solicitor for organized crime. On the weekends, she's in the Sydney Classical Opera choir.
Right.
So, at least once a month, she's performing with international acts and stuff down there in the pit. Loves it. Absolutely adores it. And then if it was up to her, she'd give it all up and be a singer. And I think that's an interesting thing as well, because that tinge of regret she sort of has, because there seems to have been two paths forked in the woods sort of moment, and she committed to law, even though her heart seemed to be with singing. And for me, even now, and then in my 20s, that'd be the saddest thing in the world, to be 50, 60, 70 and go, oh, coulda, shoulda, and have that, I guess, that artistic regret, or not pursuing something as far as we can. Hey, Broedy, welcome back.
Sorry about that. I am the absolute worst podcast host in the fucking world. So, Linda, I'm sorry, but I'm back. I feel much better. Got some fresh air for a second, and whew.
We were talking about passion, obviously, and then is it something that you make your career, or should it be, or is it something that you find? Can it be found in a lover or a partner? You know what I mean? That sort of thing. And Broedy, I was just talking about Jahan, who we had on season 1, how criminal defense solicitor for organized crime by day, sings in the Sydney Opera classical choir in the evenings. You know what I mean? And I was talking to her this morning about this episode and what was coming up, and she has that little tinge of regret of I wish, you sense it, what law or singing, the logical family, social choice, professional choice was law. And she probably doesn't regret it. She's met her husband. She's built a decent life for herself, 2 beautiful children. But the way she speaks about, my heart's always been, in singing. For
How
me,
many people have that, though? I mean, I think
that's exactly what I'm asking. And Linda was just saying, there's a lot of people who work the 9 to 5 to create the financial stability and time and space and freedom that allows them to sort of balance and indulge in these things. And arguably, I've been the opposite. When I was writing all the things and performing in all the things, and having to work more than 3 days in a row pissed me off, made me really fucking itchy, and you want to get back to the thing. And if, for all those writers who know, it's sort of like digging down into a trench. And once you're in there, you're nice and cozy and you can work and you've got the juice and you do things done. And the minute you step out for a day, you're like, okay. But then after 2 or 3 days, you got to re-dig down into the trench. And it's fucking frustrating. But hey. So now that you're back, now that you've had a reprieve, okay, then what's the podcast to you? Because you famously gave up all the big time contracts and the full time work to say, I'm going all in on a rookie podcast with some dude in Sydney. And you committed to that. You didn't play it safe. You didn't, spin the plates over here and do this on the side. You committed to this.
Well, and the thing is, I kind of have to agree with both sides of it, because I think for a long time that was the goal. It was make ends meet and articulate and figure out in that space and time what that passion is. And, like I said earlier before I so rudely left, was learning. That sticks with me, because that's the thing. And I'm so passionate about that kind of aspect of the thing, that's, again, with Misfits, what hits me the most. I'm always learning with you. The things that we talk about, like, it's funny because, yes, it's my perspective and opinion, but vocalizing it and sharing it in this kind of format gives you so much more depth into what you are thinking and feeling. So, like, for me, it's partly about the introspection of it all. Like, am I looking inward? Is it sitting where I want it to? Is it something that, like you said, like for you with writing, does it make me itchy? Like, is it something I'm trying to get back to it? Because I kind of mentioned that earlier. It's like, that's kind of my gauge, right? Like, if I'm not super driven to be a part of it, it's, like that, I would describe that as like a lack of passion for me. Like, I'm not passionate about the project. And so I'd say the podcast for me is a passion project, right? Like, yeah, it is one of those things that I itch over and I think about at night, and I plan, and I have, these big hopes and aspirations for. So yeah, I'd say the podcast is the passion thing, and it's multifaceted, and I've kind of like been left out of part of the conversation. So it's like a little out of context, but yeah, it just touches all of the things that passion would be for me. So yeah, I guess the podcast is the passion. You're right. I mean, it's funny, again, to sit here, like I said, and you have these opinions and these thought processes, and you like go do things like fucking commit to a podcast, and then you're looking back at it 2 months later and you're like, oh shit, like, yeah, that's because that meant something. And I think, I don't know if I was hearing you guys right before I left. I think a big part of it too is like, you kind of like what Linda was saying is like, the crazy for me is like fucking delusional belief is what I call it. Like, I have to delusionally believe that this thing can do what I think it can, or to me, there's no fucking point. I mean, if I don't get to that state of, again, where it's like you're punching way above the belt, and then it's not it for me. So like, yeah, it checks all of those boxes, and yeah.
All right.
I mean, for you, I don't want to get too deep on this part specifically. For you, what's the podcast? Because you still kind of got stuff going on the side, and you're building something giant on the side next to this, kind of like, in parallel with it. So, not to say that you're not passionate about the podcast, but you've obviously got stuff.
Well, you know I am, because then I get frustrated, like, why isn't it doing what we said it would be doing, and this is too slow, and fuck social media. It's so yeah, Linda, it's like, yeah, it's the same as 15 years ago. Yeah. So okay, now the podcast, it's more than a passion project, because it's not a hobby, because we've committed time and money and investment, and we come at it with a professional attitude. We schedule this like you would do TV. We have guests lined up. We have the recording schedule set up. It's like we've done season 4. Now it's just a matter of coloring in the boxes and releasing, folks. We're done, and that's how professionals do it. And I don't think you bring that sort of level of attention to detail and all those. You don't bring all of you to something that you don't give a shit about. And conversely, and I'll talk about this in the third part of the essay, it's like someone like me doesn't get irritated, edgy, and questioning and critical when the thing that you've invested in isn't sort of returning isn't behaving in the way that you should. You know what I mean? It's like, well, why is that? And how do we make it work? And how do we make it better? So it's never ever a critique of Broedy said a thing, we haven't done the thing, fuck Broedy. It's Broedy said a thing, we're following our like roadmap. If we're not there, then how do we get it there? Like, how do we get it there? Because you're committed to this guy and this project and this thing, and because we think we're doing work that matters, and we want to talk to people who give a shit who are invested, who get it, who want to do work that matters. That's the short answer. Linda, you've got that look on your face.
I do, because I think you're talking about systems. I don't think you're talking about passion at all.
Go on, explain.
So
Both of us or Chris specifically?
No.
Well.
Okay.
Right. So you're going, we said a thing, we made this plan, we're putting it into practice, we're doing this, we're following it up, we're doing all of the things that we should. Therefore, the systems will eventually work. Social media will, if they don't change the algorithms, work for you. Do you know? Or if they do change the algorithms, yes, maybe that will work. Yeah. Whatever. But I think that people who operate, certainly in my industry, from passion, and I think artists that operate from passion don't have systems. I think they are launching themselves headlong into shit, and they're not considering what's going on out here. They're just going, I'm gonna do the thing. Let's do the thing. This is the thing. I'm doing the thing. And they're like, how are you doing the thing? I don't know. It's just I'm doing the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
But see, that for me, that separates amateur from professional. You know, I mean, we've all seen it. Artists, sure, we're a bunch of artists talking here, but you can pick any industry. Like, I'm just going to rock in. I'm going to wing it. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to wing it. The fuck, what? What? Like, and of course, but artists and anything on social media is the lowest hanging fruit because it seems immediately accessible. It seems like I'm enough. Like, I can just show up and be enough. Actually, Linda mentioned something right in the beginning, which was really interesting about how people who want to be actors or artists or audition for anything, and they show up day one in the audition and they might get in. Let's say they get in. Let's say they've got a personality or like whatever, and you probably know exactly who I'm talking about, Linda Nicholls-Gidley. They have a personality and they get through. Cool. And then you go through first year of acting college, right? Now, let me tell you, first year of acting college is, why do you walk like that? Why do you talk like that? Do you understand that you've held these habits for all of your life? Do you understand that a room full of strangers are going to look at you?
Which I would die. I've told Chris this before. I would die.
Right. And but like on screen, like on social media or whatever, I can just post it and like hope for the likes, and it's still anonymous, right? But on stage, there's nowhere to hide. Like in the round, there is nowhere to hide, right? And all of these sort of things. Cool. I want you to fall in love on stage. I want you to immediately fall in love, complete vulnerability in a room full of strangers, and make them believe it. All these sorts of things. So it's massive. The point is, it's massively, massively challenging. So you rock up with this ego of like, I'm interesting and I'm entertaining because X, Y, and Z has told you so. And then you meet people like Linda who go, I can't even hear you from the back of the room. Yeah. I actually, while we're here, I remember distinctly. No, it's at
15 years.
No.
Yeah. You're in my room now. No. But here you go. I had a very specific vocal block, and I remember this in first year. I don't know if you do, Linda, but it was, I couldn't raise my voice past a certain level.
Oh yeah, you were so quiet. Yeah.
I couldn't. So that requires vocally is to drop.
Fucking way,
bro. No, but let me explain. You need to like drop, release and drop your diaphragm so your voice sinks down, and then you project and like whatever else. But because I couldn't do it past a certain level. There's just a solid block, and I don't think it was until second year maybe. To be fair, that you sort of learned to. And it was volume. It wasn't projection. It was specifically volume. Now, the reason for this was purely psychological, is that I had a father who would rage at me. And so in my upbringing, being loud was hostile and aggressive. And I never want to make anyone feel like that. So I will never be loud. Walking to acting college, and Miss Nicholls-Gidley says, you've got to be loud sometimes. And the thing is, we're talking about this 15 years later in hindsight. At the time, you've got no idea why you can't do it. You've got no idea. You've got no idea. Why can't I breathe? Why can't I be loud? Well, if I shout, no, not shout.
Well, that's
drop
what I
your
was going to
voice.
ask you. Is that something that you came to a conclusion later, or is this something that you were actively in like second year and you're like, oh shit, like this is dad, you know, like
I'm
this
pretty
is.
sure I asked you. I
Okay,
was
it
like,
fucking hit you then.
yeah. No,
Okay,
I'm pretty
okay.
sure. Like, I have a pretty good sense about this sort of stuff, and I think I probably said to Chris, "Did you come from a loud family? Did people yell a lot? You know, that sort of stuff."
Mm.
Yeah.
And Chris also had a lot of martial arts training, and often people with martial arts training are softly spoken because that's the way that
Right.
you hold yourself together.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
A lot of
So
control.
I think I probably did all of that and just went, what about this?
Yeah.
You can see people going, ooh,
Yeah.
crumbling.
Right. And so specific then, like, so in that moment you have a choice then, don't you? Like, but I'm entertaining and people say I'm whatever, so I can stay on stage or I can fall back to TikTok. You know, or something's got to motivate and pursue you to get better or to want to get better or to find an explanation. And look, again, this wasn't a light switch. Linda didn't go, hey, poke. And I went, oh shit, you're right, Linda. Thanks. And came back on Monday, like, able to project. It takes a while to work through, then takes a while to retrain. And then even then, it's a skill that you'll seldom use and utilize, but you have it in your toolkit to use it specifically when you want to. But how did we get here? That's right. Something motivating or supporting, I guess, your emotional direction and sense of self and belief. Because if we've all talked about you need to be a little bit crazy, you need to be a little bit defiant, all these sorts of things, at the worst end of the scale, you're narcissistic and delusional because you don't have any of the skills or talent to back this up. And we see that everywhere. At the positive end of the scale, you need that self belief of like, I'm gonna be okay. Like, the show didn't work out this time. It doesn't diminish me as a human. It's really, I don't know if I've even learned that lesson yet, to be honest. But sort of does that make sense? Or do you guys have similar opinions? Or
Look, I know plenty of people that I have trained who are no longer acting, no longer actors, no longer even in the business. And I don't know if they still have that ember inside of them, like your friend from season 1. I don't know. But they are often people that I look at and I think, oh my God, why are you not pursuing this? You were so good.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, I guess there does have to be something that sustains you, whatever that is, that sustains you to keep pursuing when you get in the face of so many no's, right?
Yeah.
To pursue whatever that creative passion is.
Yeah, some level of resilience.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the resilience rather than passion.
All right, so I'll move to part 3. Here we go.
Before we get there, real quick, you had mentioned something just a minute ago, and then before I left, you guys had said something. I'm just curious, as two professionally trained, actors or people in the industry, is social media the cop out? Is like, so for an actor, like somebody that is passionate or has that skill set, instead of pursuing that industry to be like, just like you said, Chris, oh, I'm likable, it's enough, than to just go cop out on social media is like that. To other professionals, is that what it looks like?
I think that's what we would call your 15 minutes.
I'll
okay.
Look, I'll be let's say let's be, I'll try
not to
and
diminish anyone.
Not at all.
No, it's true. I mean, it's absolutely, and even in the people in that spot that have to capture that reoccurring 15 minutes that they know it's my 15 minutes right now.
Right.
And
now.
if you've ever seen any influencer try to transition into any other media that isn't, TikTok or Instagram or whatever, then you understand, like, the void of difference. Like it's not, and it's look, yeah. Besides the one thing you can do on social media is always be yourself. That's fine, and do that. The one thing that good acting colleges, singing colleges, dancing colleges will challenge you to do is go, that's a great place to start. You need more, and like really stretch your range. Is that fair, Linda?
Yeah, look, you get a real sense pretty early on of what someone can do and what their party trick is.
Yeah.
So that's your social media, right? That's your party trick. And every actor has one. We all have our own little party tricks. And then it's, can you do a different one? And some people can't. Some people just can't.
Can you do a different one? Yes.
Yeah. Have you got another party trick? Because, you know, to have a viable career, you have to be able to do a bunch. You can't just do, I mean, there are some people that, you know, Jack Nicholson, he does a great party trick and he's awesome, but he's also the same party trick, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our hot take. Now to the third and final part of my passionate essay. Okay, so where we left off was, is passion something that you find like a lost treasure, or is it a journey that you commit yourself to? So I'm a passionate individual, and looking back now, I suspect I always have been. Through school, I fantastically couldn't give a fuck about things that didn't specifically engage me. However, I did successfully manage to teach myself foreign languages in my spare time. But while I was a passionate actor and writer and filmmaker, I was also a passionate barista, which isn't nearly as inspiring. Like passionate meaning I was emotionally invested in my work. I took pride in being a professional and doing a good job. Passionate also meaning I have an emotional reaction to things that affect me. So that customers or staff. So having to remake coffee would noticeably piss me off, and rude customers were taught manners, whether they liked it or whether they liked it or not. Now, this makes me sound more temperamental than I am, but this is, thanks, Linda. But this is the nature of passion. An emotional investment is not something that you can turn on or off. Like try turning off and on your attachment to your children, or try turning off and on, you know, your attachment to your lover. I'll also note, as much as I loved making coffee, it was never, not even once, the burning desire that got me out of bed in the morning. Right? So therefore, I'd argue that passion is neither an object to attain nor a journey to take, but a verb, meaning emotionally invested action. Understanding this allows us to credit passion where it's truly applied. Now, at the time, I was 12 months into my shoot schedule for a feature film, not including the months of pre-production, rehearsal time, financial meetings, press launches, and the innumerate years the script took to write, all of which was unpaid. Equally, every member of cast and crew has given their time and skill, some for almost 2 years, completely unpaid. So how and why does a project like this get done? Because everyone involved believed in the project. They were emotionally engaged in the project and what we were trying to achieve. So there is something distinct about passion in that it surpasses logic or finance. And this is what gives it its magical quality. But dismissing passion as ethereal diminishes all the legitimate work that you can achieve. Final thoughts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Well said.
Yeah. Look, I think, yeah, and again, I think it does come back to this idea of when you really want to do something, you will create the systems that allow you to do it. I really do think, and maybe that is a professional passion as opposed to an amateur passion, but I think we create the systems that allow us to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, even if ultimately the film or whatever doesn't come to fruition, or it doesn't achieve the success that we think it will. Maybe there's a different measure of success. You've followed the pathway and that journey towards that building each of the steps along the way. Is it emotional? I think it's highly emotional. You know?
Yeah. In that specific instance, I think there's not just for me, but for you and everybody, there's a lot to be said to seeing something that you've started through to the very end, like to see where it can go and what it can do. And sometimes if it ends up in a dead end, just like, well, look, at least I walked the whole highway to know that it ends here, and I can move on to the next thing without any sort of regret, you know.
When I did my show, and it was heavily based on my experiences with postnatal depression and being on crutches for the last 3 months of my pregnancy, and not being able to walk and those kinds of things. During one of the shows, there was a woman who was talking furiously to her husband all throughout. Really pissed me off. It annoyed me so much. And then I came out and I was talking to a few people, and a woman pulled on my sleeve and said, "Hi, you probably noticed me. I was talking throughout the show." And I was like, "Oh,
hi."
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Great.
Who? Yeah.
And she said, "I just need to tell you that the reason I was hitting my husband and telling him that's what it was like. That's how much pain I was in. That right there, you didn't understand. And that's exactly what it was like." And that moment will stick with me forever, because suddenly it wasn't about the fact that I hemorrhaged money or that, I didn't get enough audiences to see it, that she had seen it and she was able to say to her husband that you can see a visual representation of what I went through right there. That's enough of the success / my passion was able to speak to her.
Yeah.
In some way.
And had you not, that wouldn't have occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yes. Broedy, you have to follow that.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Yes. Okay. I agree.
Passion being an emotionally invested verb. Like how does that sit, rather than a muse to pursue, rather than a gift to be given?
No, look, I think it's interesting because it makes a whole world of sense. The thing that I think, I guess for my own, dissecting of it, just where it gets a little stringent, is like, that's then too where I think you have to gauge the person in the experience. Because like you had said earlier, I think there's a very real line between amateur and professional. And I think regardless of the verb passion, if, like Linda said, you don't at some point in time identify and create those systems that allow you to pursue it, I don't think that in itself is enough to keep doing. I don't think you'll walk the end of the highway. I just don't think you will. So I do think it's an emotional experience, but I do think that part of it for me, and especially passion, is like the regulation of those emotions as well. I think a big piece of it for me is the insecurities or the things that I don't want to happen or that I'm worried about, and then driving past those. It's or walking past those signs and seeing that stuff and being like, that's not it here, and I think again, just to me personally, I don't think now having this conversation with you guys, passion alone, just passion by itself, is enough. And that the verb and the kind of construct and the way that you explained it, I think that gives people even more reason to say that it is, when I just truly don't believe that it is enough. Like there's more. You need more.
You need more.
You need more.
If not for your health and safety, then for those around you.
Right. Yeah.
And I would agree. I think it's. I'll qualify it by saying yes. It's a great ingredient to have in the cake. You still need eggs and flour and milk, right? I'll also say that like a life without it, a life without passion, or knowing that you've given it up, like is an incredibly sorrowful thing. And so it's not something to be sneered at or mocked, you know. It is absolutely something that's worth pursuing, and you can find it in, you know, some people for knitting. I mean, Linda, I know you bake custom cakes for your kids every year for their birthday.
Just about
Like
to do one.
elaborate cakes, and she posts them on Facebook, and a sheer sign of it wasn't just mum grabbing a recipe and winging it, you know. But
I mean, that came out of the fact that when I started doing that, I didn't have any creative outlet at all.
really,
Yeah. And it was like a way for me to do something, anything creative. I was at home. I had, you know, kids. I was living in a new city. I didn't know anyone, you know, so it was like, okay, well, here we go.
there's only so many times you can sit in your rocking chair and practice your accents before you get it.
Yeah.
Well, so does that kind of, like, for me, that reads as like it wasn't necessarily passion in that kind of endeavor, which again you would need to get to some like higher level, right? But that's not where it started for you. It was almost like the release of that, you know, like I can let that down for a second and my mind can just create, you know. And I wonder if passion sometimes gets in the way of creativity, you know.
I think someone wrote a
maybe.
book on that.
Was that a little plug? Is that what you just did? Did you plug your book again?
I gotta do it every now and then. You know what I mean? Well, you get credits in the book. So Linda gets a name drop, and a deserved name drop as well. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, now that Brody's joined us, I think that wraps it up. I think that wraps it up, Misfits. So what do you take a good, long, hard look at your life? Are you passionate about anything? Find the things you are and pursue those. It doesn't have to be 100%, but find a little something that brings you joy. It can't be a bad thing. That wraps up episode 2. Broedy, do you know what's coming up for episode 3 on season 4? He's furiously pulling up the seasonal run sheet.
No, hands are... no, is it marketing? Is that...
It is. It's the episode that you're responsible for. Yes.
So that's why I know somewhat.
So yeah, we're talking about hype, marketing, and branding. What's the difference? Do we need it? Is it all just smokes and mirrors? I'm going to be a cynical motherfucker. Brody's on point. I believe he's bringing a guest. We'll find out. But that's what we're going to get into, Misfits. In the age of LinkedIn, Twitter, social media, YouTube pop-up ads, all of this. Apparently our attention spans are diminishing. I don't buy it. So I don't. So
wow. Okay.
I don't.
You need to be introduced to my team.
Then you can listen to the next episode and you can flame in the comments.
I will.
Because I know that's your style. Broedy, what do you anticipate coming up for next episode?
I think your fucking spicy attitude is going to be very apparent. I'm excited because I think if the scheduling works out, we will have a guest. And from Africa, Australia to America, we'll have an inside look at kind of what it means. And I think, in my perspective, we're going to find out that countries other than America have a little more integrity or don't to their reasoning behind marketing. So we'll see. That's my intent. That's what I want to dive into and pick apart. So we'll see.
Let's find out. Linda, thank you so much for making the time and joining us.
You're very welcome.
I'm so sorry. Oh my God. On the black screen that will be there for the portion of the episode I was gone, I'll just put world's worst podcast host.
And a mugshot.
Yes.
Linda, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to improve their public speaking or learn a sexy accent, where's the best place to reach out to you to find you?
My Instagram is at Vochovox, so you can get me there.
How do you spell
Or
it?
VOCOVOX. Vochovox. It means
Vochovox.
summon your voice.
Not Vocovox.
Not
Vochovox.
voco, vocho.
Where's that
It's-
from?
It's Latin, babe.
I thought so. You're the second person today who's quoted Latin at me, and I'm like,
Learn another language, Chris.
learn a dead language so you can be smug.
Teaching myself Cuelga at the moment. There you go.
Nice, yeah. Why am I
Dead
not
language,
surprised?
yeah.
So there you go, Misfits. You can watch us for free and on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. You can get this episode 2 weeks in advance and all the bonus episode with sexy merch discounts on Care Misfit. Go to promisfitspodcast.com to get all the details. You can find Linda at Vochovox on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Look up Linda Nicholls-Gidley on LinkedIn. You'll find me. You'll find her. We're normally trash talking each other. I'll see you next Tuesday for coffee.
Excellent.
Excellent. In the meantime, I've been Chris.
I've been Brody.
And I've been Linda.
Excellent. And we'll see you on the next one. You stay classy, Misfits.